Well, more now on the rescissions package. I'm going to bring into the conversation Tennessee Congressman and the man running to be the next governor of the volunteer state, our good friend, Congressman John Rose. Congressman, good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for having me on the Todd Starnes Show.
And Congressman, before we get to this Autopen scandal, I want to get your take on what we just heard here. The Republicans in the Senate seem to be having some getting a little squeamish on cutting Sesame Street in Iraq and these vegan programs in Zambia. What say you?
Well, I think the senators need to remember that 77 million Americans spoke loudly and clearly last November 5th, and they need to honor the wishes of those Americans who gave them a Senate majority, restored and maintained our majority in the House, and reelected President Trump overwhelmingly. And they need to come through for the American people. And they need to remember that the president promised just the sort of cuts that we see in this rescissions package.
Now, Congressman, I know you've been traveling across the state of Tennessee. What are you hearing from your constituents and regular Tennesseans out there when it comes to these cuts in the budget?
Sure. Well, I think Tennesseans are excited about the president following through on his campaign promises, and they're excited to see Congress delivering with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Law, and they want to see the president stay on a roll. And so they would want to see these rescissions passed, and I think the American people need to reach out to their senators, those who are balking here, and let them know loudly and clearly that they sent them to Washington to help the president implement his vision for restoring the greatness of America.
You know, Congress, another big story that I know you've been following is this Autopen scandal. How big of a deal is this that Joe Biden may not have been in charge of his White House?
Well, I think it's a very big deal, and it was one of the most common questions I got over the last 4 years of who is governing our country. And we now, with the curtain pulled back and the opportunity to see what was happening, know that there are serious questions about which of the decisions and formal actions that the president was purportedly taking as president, which of those was he actually making the decisions on, and in which instances was maybe the chief of staff or other lower-level staffers at the White House actually making decisions for the president without his knowledge. And so we need to get to the bottom of it. That's why I've co-sponsored the resolution to create a select committee that my friend Buddy Carter from Georgia has introduced. And I think we need to see not only Congress get to the bottom of this, but I hope that the Attorney General and her team will also be looking very closely at those actions that the president was taking in the final hours of his administration, pardoning literally thousands, the most pardons, I think, of any president in history, that indeed may have not been made appropriately. It may have been a White House staffer, the chief of staff, or others who were making those decisions without the full knowledge or assent of the president. And that really brings into question the will of the people who elect the president of the United States. If they can't trust that the person who they elected is making the decisions, then we may have already lost our democracy.
Well, I know Senator Rand Paul on the other side there of the Capitol now reissuing a criminal referral of Dr. Fauci to the Department of Justice. If those pardons were signed by the Autopen without the president's final discretion, should they be voided?
I think they should, and I think we need to get to the bottom of that. And even the Fauci pardon supposedly signed off in the wee hours of the night, late hours of the night. And the question is, did the president even know that was happening? Was he making that decision? And clearly it is hard to imagine that the president, in the condition that we now know he was in at that time, was literally pouring through the thousands, I think 4,000 or so clemency grants that were made by him and signed off on by the Autopen. Was the president aware of the circumstances? And what is the standard that we should hold our presidents to if they're going to use the awesome power granted to them in the Constitution? So we need to get to the bottom of this, and I hope Senator Paul will press, and I hope that the Attorney General will press, and I hope that Congress will put in place a select committee, as Buddy Carter has proposed, to dig into the details of this and make sure that the American people's decisions are being made by the person they elected.
All right, Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there. We certainly appreciate you taking time to be with us on Newsmax. Thank you.